Welcome to this webinar presented by Competitive Advantage. We're a consultancy specialising in the construction sector, providing market research, training and consultancy services, primarily for the building product manufacturer. Today, we're going to look at some of the findings from the recently published Construction Media Index. This comprises two reports: Architect Communications Channels and Contractor Communication Channels. If you have any questions, please use the chat facility and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. We will also be sharing a recording of the webinar, which we'll email to you in a day or so. I'm Chris Ashworth, founder of Competitive Advantage, and I'm joined by my colleague Michael Prince, our research manager. Between us, we wrote the Construction Media Index, so we're very familiar with the reports. I'd also like to thank our two sponsors, Refresh and Ridgemount. Without their funding, this report would not have been possible. They also provided valuable input at the design stage of the project. We would also like to thank RIBA Journal, who supported the project by mailing a link for the survey to their readership. These are the objectives of the reports, primarily to fill an information gap with impartial research. We look at the various industry communications channels and how they are used. In this webinar, we will share some of this information. The Architects report comprises 97 charts and figures, and the Contractors report 80. So in the time available, we can only give a flavour of the findings. But the reports are available to purchase on our website, where there is also a list of the charts.
Good morning, everybody. Overall, the reports are based on 200 architect interviews and 100 contractor interviews. As you can see, the majority are telephone interviews. We have also adjusted for any potential bias in the titles of the magazines read, especially in the Architects report, for those who follow the RIBA Journal sample. Then moving on to the respondent profile, these are the age ranges used in Ofcom's data. So overall, we thought it best to use these in our report to allow a comparison with national trends. And here you can see the age ranges for the architects respondents. And as you can see, there is quite a broad representation across all the ages. And also you can see the size of organizations that reflect the typical mix of RIBA practices. There is also a broad spread of sectors represented. Some respondents worked in more than one sector, and that would be why the total exceeds 100%. More respondents were architects, with a few representing other roles within the architect's practice. Similarly, the case for contractors, with a spread of age ranges and also a variety of organisation sizes represented. And then again, similarly for the sectors they work in. We also targeted the decision makers and influencers within the contractor organisation.
And so on to publication readership. 78% of architects read industry publications, of whom 30% enjoy a company subscription. So as a means of reaching architects, industry publications are still a good channel to use. When it comes to the format used, 56% use digital only, but 14% use hard copy only. So that format still endures. In the Construction Media Index, we list the popular journals with readership for both digital and hard copy formats. What the report also tells us is that 26% of readers say their readership of hard copy reduced in the past year, and another 14% expect readership of digital to increase next year. Contractor readership of industry publications is much lower at 47%. This may be in part due to only 25% having access to corporate subscriptions. But far more of those who read publications use digital, with just 10% reading only hard copy publications. Readership of hard copy did reduce by 21% last year and is expected to reduce further in the coming year. Interestingly, the numbers reducing readership of digital in the past year exceeded those increasing their digital readership, a trend which looks set to continue in the coming year. This suggests a net decline in industry publication readership. As you can see, the most popular format for digital readership is via delivery to your inbox, but this needs to be a trusted source. However, 40% of architects say they read articles via search engines, highlighting the need to have a good online presence. 58% use a desktop PC to read the news, suggesting they do this while sitting at their desk. Video and podcasts have limited popularity, with less than 10% using these two formats. 3/4 of respondents said the principal barrier to accessing the news is having the time to read it, with a third citing information overload as a problem. This highlights the need to make information initially eye-catching and then easy to read. For contractors, delivery to the inbox and trusted sources by a trusted source and browsing the internet are used equally. Slightly more read items via a tablet than a desk PC, suggesting they're viewing it while away from the office, perhaps on site. But like architects, the principal barrier to readership is having the time to read the publication, an issue for 83% of respondents.
Moving on to online sources of information and influence. This is the data from Ofcom and We Are Social for usage of devices by the UK population. As you can see, the smartphone and laptop or desk PC remain the most popular, but alternatives are growing in popularity. In researching online usage, we've also looked at the devices used and found that the smartphone is most popular for social media. But for those who are office-based, the laptop or desktop PC are still important. It is also key to understand the popular sources of information and influence. We asked about thought leaders, but only 6% of architects follow an industry personality, and none of our contractor sample did so. Online blogs published by independent third parties are read by half of our architects, a small proportion regularly, while manufacturer blogs have a slightly smaller following. Podcasts are also only used by 1/4 of architects. And for contractors, the numbers are fewer for all of these channels. However, the good news is that for both architects and contractors, the expectation is that many more will increase their consumption of these channels that reduce usage. And moving on to social media, you see here the frequency of usage of social media and the comparison with usage in 2021. Overall, the architects are not accessing social media as regularly as they once did, with the number who access several times a day falling, although it still represents the largest proportion of architects. The frequencies, once a day or a few times a day, are increasing, and there are also reducing numbers accessing social media less than once a week. It should also be noted that the lower frequency of use is more with those under 34, in particular Gen Z. We asked respondents about change of usage, and while last year there was an overall increase in usage, those expecting usage to decline in the coming year was greater than those expecting it to increase. Why is frequency reducing, you may ask? One suggestion is that with the automation of postings by those trying to sell to architects, they are becoming bombarded and easing off on the use of social media. However, contractors are increasing their usage of social media, but this still lags behind the much more social media savvy architects. Their feedback suggests this increase in usage will continue. We also looked at the most popular times of day for accessing both for weekdays and weekends to help planning when to post and the devices used. These are the figures. These are the figures for the most used social media platforms for the total UK population published by Ofcom. When we then looked at usage by architects and contractors for various business purposes, including staying informed, networking, obtaining product information, and design ideas. LinkedIn tended to be the most popular, but not exclusively, highlighting the difference in usage for personal and business activities. We also asked about the relevance of adverts received via social media. 30% of architects said they were not relevant, while at the other end of the scale, 8% said they were very relevant. Interestingly, of these contractors who use social media, more considered adverts to be relevant.
So now looking at sources of technical information and advice, we ask quite a lot of questions about this sources of information. And has always been the case, the online search is an important starting point. But of almost equal importance is the manufacturer website, with stockists and distributor websites trailing behind. There are also subtle differences between sources of advice, shown here for architects, and sources of ideas and inspiration. The use of the face-to-face meeting has been declining, as has the use of the phone call, perhaps reflecting the wider adoption of online sources of information. And although there are numerous product directories available, there are just 3 which are clear leaders. I use the term product directory in its broadest sense, as these are also evolving, as demonstrated by MBS Source, which is amongst the leaders. Social media also plays a role, with YouTube and the most popular source. Remember, this is with architects and contractors who probably require different information to the homeowner who looks for the how-to video. We also looked at the use of virtual and immersive reality software, but this is still at its early stage of adoption. In terms of engagement preferences, the pandemic had a big impact on how we worked, and since then we have seen the development of hybrid working. Of course, home working is also influenced by the size of organisation, with small ones perhaps not even having offices. As you can see here, there is quite a mix of work practices amongst architects. The challenge is how to meet with them, as if they're only attending the office, say 2 days a week, they want to use this time to meet with colleagues or use specialist equipment and may be less inclined to meet with manufacturers. What our research has shown is that about half of architects participated in face-to-face seminars and conferences, while less than that attended online events. And when it comes to the preference for the format of CPD seminars, there is a split between online and face-to-face. Even during the pandemic, many contractors did not work from home, no doubt because of the hands-on nature of their roles, and that trend remains, with only a small proportion regularly working from home. That brings us to the any questions. Sarah, have there been any questions come through from our audience?
No, there hasn't.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Well, if you do have questions, do email them through to us and we'll try and answer them. And as I said at the start, we will be emailing you a link to this recording with some other useful links as well. So from Michael and myself, I'd like to say thank you for joining us today for this webinar, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future. Thank you. Goodbye.